There. All right, we're live. Thanks again, everyone, for being here. I'm super excited to bring you this session on harnessing the power of instructional coaches, hosted by Jeff Bradbury. And I'll turn it over to Jeff to kind of introduce himself and the topic. And again, thank you, Jeff, for being here. I really appreciate your support of Project FoundED.
First of all, thank you all for being here today. It is a pleasure and an honor. Thank you for coming out. Also, I know many of you have days off today. Happy holidays if you are in observance. Today, we're going to have a fun time. As I mentioned before the recording, this is not going to be a straight lecture. I'd love to get to know you. Why are you here? What are your goals? What made you come to a webinar like this? And we'll have a little bit of time today for doing some interactive stuff. The idea for today is to help us understand the position of the instructional coach. What is it? How does it work? Why is it important? And really help your companies learn how to get brand awareness into the classrooms, leverage your applications, websites, products, solutions into the classrooms, and how we can use our instructional coaches to our advantage. We have a little bit of an agenda here today. We're going to talk about who, what, how, and why. So number one, big rule of mine is this is not a lecture. Please feel free to reach out. Please feel free to stop me if you want to know, hey, Jeff, I have a question. That was one of the reasons why this was not a Zoom webinar where it's just, stage and people. I want this to be a meeting. Please feel free to come on to the mic. Please feel free to come onto the camera. This is not going to work as well if it's a lecture-based thing. So please feel free to reach out and say hi. I'd love to have this thing be more conversational than just me talking over slides. Number two, this is the teacher in me coming out. You can only learn by participating in the conversation. So if you're active, I want to make sure that you guys get everything that you need out of here. And I'd honestly love to tailor everything I say to you and your company's needs. And number three, you came here for personal or professional reason. I want to help you meet your goals. Okay, whether that be now or let's talk a little bit after the session. I'm here for you. I want to make sure that everything we're doing here. So number one, we're going to talk about who are the instructional coaches in a school district? Where did they come from? Number two, we're going to talk a little bit about what do school districts expect from instructional coaches? And also, what do instructional coaches need to be successful in their positions? How can EdTech companies support instructional coaches? This has been a big journey of mine over the last couple of years. I'll explain a little bit of that as we go through here. So it really comes down to how can companies support coaches? But on the flip side, how can coaches support companies? And then lastly, we'll kind of wrap up here and talk about the why. Why is this conversation important? Why was this the perfect topic to be doing, especially this time of year as school gets underway? And also, I want to know why this is an important conversation to you. What made you come here today? And what made you decide to take your day off or a little bit of time out of your lunch break to spend some time with us? So this is where we're going today. A little bit about myself. My name is Jeff Bradbury. It is so nice to be here with you guys. And oh, we're adding some more people. That's pretty cool. A little bit of background on myself. I've been in education for the last 20 years, 10 plus years. I've been an instructional coach. My previous district, I was the only instructional coach out of a K-12 school district, which means I had the opportunity to be in preschool 1 minute and in the superintendent's office the next minute, and having the opportunity to really help lead a district, create a professional development roadmap. In my current position, I'm a lead instructional coach for digital learning, which is a big way of saying I kind of sit at that fulcrum between what's happening in the classroom and what's happening in central office. And I get a chance to work with our 25 principals, our 8 instructional coaches, our coordinator, and really help lead the district and create those opportunities for connecting what is happening in innovation in your world with what is happening in the classroom in our world. Proud to be a TEDx speaker. I've had an opportunity over the last couple of years to work closely with Microsoft and Google. As a master trainer, educator, currently a Microsoft fellow, which I'm really, really excited about. But on the Google side, I'm also a Google certified teacher, certified trainer. And I was really excited. Last year, I was awarded the ISTE award for being an instructional coach. So a lot of experience on this, and I want to be here to help and answer any of your questions about the position and how you can leverage it. Before we deep dive into this, my question to you is simple. who are you? And of course, being a good teacher here, we have a nice activity. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put in the chat a link to a Canva board. And you can take that, you can fill that out. Essentially on the Canva board here, you've got these little squares. Think of these as little Post-it notes. You can grab a Post-it note and just tell me your name, your company, your email. But while you're doing that, if you don't mind, and I don't want to put anybody on the spot, but feel free to jump on and let's just talk right here as you guys are doing all of that information. So, feel free. Caitlin, Jennifer, Jason, Dana, anybody want to start with who are you? And what brought you here today? We're going to be a big family today.
Hey, I'm happy to share. Can you see me?
Yep.
So my name is Dana Kravchik. I started my company 2 years ago when I saw teachers logging in, logging out of all the e-learning softwares that the kids were using to be able to monitor and track what they were doing with their progress, things like, Lexia, No Reading. And so what I do is I create one place for all this information to be shared with teachers so they can easily set up learning groups, also see mastery because we interact with LMS, and be able to give, feedback in a timely manner without having to navigate all the different systems. I'm here today because I'm starting to expand. I've so far worked only with a few schools, and I want to learn how to do this better. So I'd love to. I'm excited to hear what you have to say. Yeah.
Nice. Welcome.
Thank you.
Anybody else want to jump in? It's nice seeing everybody. I'm watching all the little Post-it notes here. I'm seeing some companies who have actually featured on TeacherCast too, which is really cool. Anybody else want to jump in? What brings you here today? Who are you?
Sure, I can jump in. My name's Jason Altacruz. I'm the founder of a website called Free Math, and it's focused on allowing students to be able to express math work digitally into a computer and then giving an optimized grading experience for math teachers to see the detailed step-by-step process that students went through sooner and give feedback on formative assessments more easily.
Nice.
I'm looking today just to kind of understand how to harness the resources that are possible to get into more classrooms and spread the good message of the project I'm working on.
Nice. Welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
I'll go.
Go for it.
Hi, I'm David Sunenshine, CEO and founder of IQ Sonics. We have a program called Sing and Speak for Kids, which is for early childhood development for children with speech delays, in particular autism or English language learners. And we have just gotten our first large contract with the California Department of Developmental Services, regional centers, and looking how to expand in both the health and education industries from being a basic startup bootstrapped into a very functional, growing organization, and how to handle investors and larger teams, etc.
Welcome. Nice to have you here.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Sure, I can pop in. I'm Katie Dorr, and I'm here from the West Coast. I'm here from Washington State. I'm an instructional coach for a K-12 district, and I am a department of one. I'm trying to figure out how we can best harness technology integration in the classroom and support teachers. So just like you, Jeff, I can be in a TK classroom 1 minute, and then I'm in a senior high school English class the next minute. So lots of different things going on, just wanting to stay up to date with some of the current trends and different things that are happening and how we can best provide services for our staff.
I really appreciate you being here. I'm just curious, how many of you, you can do show of hands, whatever it is, how many of you are instructional coaches in here? 1, 2, awesome. Kind of a hand. Okay, good. Awesome. Please do me a favor, keep working on the Canva thing. Let me know. I will be reaching out to you after this, probably with a personalized email of thanks, how you doing? What can we do together? So as much information as you can, as many, whatever you can do on there is, these are my goals. This is what I'm looking for, whether it be from the coaching side or from the EdTech side. Okay. While you're doing that, let's get this party started. As I mentioned in the intro, I've been in education for a long time. And 10 years ago, I became an instructional coach. And I realized very quickly that by working with EdTech companies and also by working in the classroom, there's a disconnect. And then you go to an ISTE conference, and then you go to an FUTC conference, and then you do a webinar, and then you have a chance to network with all of these people. And what I'm realizing is that there's a lot of goodness going on, but at the same time, there's a lot of confusion going on. All of these EdTech companies are fantastic. They've got great motivation behind them. They want all the best in the world for their applications and to be used by students. But what I find is that they're not quite sure how to get there, and they're not quite sure who to talk to. Sometimes when I work with EdTech companies, they say, how can you help me get in front of teachers? Teachers are the ones that are using the app. How can TeacherCast help me get in front of teachers? Sometimes I have companies come up and say, how can TeacherCast help me get my applications, websites, product solutions in front of parents? That's another answer. Often they say, how can TeacherCast help me get my apps, websites, product solutions in front of administrators, tech directors, superintendents? And what I'm finding over the last couple years, more so really recently due to the pandemic, is a lot of EdTech companies don't quite know where they need to go and where they need to focus their energy or how. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. The first thing we want to figure out is, who are instructional coaches? Okay. And what I'll ask is, Katie, if you want to jump in at all, and, we can even play co-host on this. Let's just have a big conversation. Feel free to just anybody, just open up and let's talk about this. But when we're looking at who are instructional coaches, it's really important to know that instructional coaches are all first and foremost certified teachers. Okay. They are teachers who, for whatever reason, love the profession so much that they wanted to figure out how to help a bigger bubble. And that's where I was. I was a content teacher for almost 20 years. I was an orchestra teacher. I got involved in professional development, got involved in teaching, did a lot of ed camps, created a bunch of ed camps. And the next thing I know, I answered the call to become a tech coach or an instructional coach. And because they're teachers, they're also content specialists. And an instructional coach can come from elementary, can come from middle school or secondary. But the basic thing is, these are people that are masters with pedagogy. These are people that are masters with working with students, working with adults. The third one's kind of an odd one. I always say the first job of an EdTech coach is to be a therapist. Our job is to walk into a classroom, walk into a principal's office, walk into a central office, and first ask the question, hi, how are you doing? Is everything okay? Making sure that we can have those conversations is really, really important. And finally, the ending here is, instructional coaches have to be a master in adult and student learning. They have to be able to know not only how to reach people who are 7 years old, 17 years old, 27 years old, 37 years old, and yes, 57 years old. They need to be able to reach out to all of those different people. And as Katie even mentioned, all at the same time, right? You can be working with 7-year-olds 1 minute and then 18-year-olds another minute, and absolutely being able to make that impact and being able to shift as quickly as possible. Katie, I don't want to put you on the spot here, but I'm going to. Am I missing anything from the big bubble here? I mean, I know we can kind of go into this, but when I'm looking at who are instructional coaches, am I missing anything?
No, I think it looks right. And the one thing that I would add in there is, I liked your last bullet point that they're masters in adult and student learning, because oftentimes the students are the easy part.
Yeah.
And especially when you're talking about technology, there's a lot of teachers who are like, nope, I'm afraid of it. I don't like it. I don't want to use it. And they think they have to know everything. But sometimes it's okay for them to turn over the power to their students to learn as well. So I think sometimes that adult learning piece is really pivotal in order to build those relationships and build those trusting relationships in order to get things moving forward.
I find that instructional coaches often come in two varieties, and I don't mean to generalize, and I certainly don't want to sound off on this, but a lot of times I find that instructional coaches are usually in their late 20s. They came in, they're really EdTech focused. They did a really good job their first couple years, and their administrator said, we're starting a coaching position. Hey, you're really good at this. And so they're usually in that late 20s, early 30s, or I find, and this is my case, They're in that late 30s, mid 40s area. I'm not going to tell you how old I am, but they're in that it's a career change. I've been teaching for so long, and now I'm making that move. I'm making that shift. It's a stepping stone. It's my way to become an admin. For many coaches right now, I'll say, unfortunately, the instructional coaching position is their step to get into an EdTech position or to get into a private company. But having that knowledge, it really is looking at it from the EdTech company's point of view of, this is your fulcrum. These are the people that sit above the classroom. And I don't mean to put it awkwardly there, but they sit above the classroom, but they sit under administration. They really are the ones that are knowing what's happening in all of the classrooms and all of the buildings, but they're also the ones that are working with central office and being asked their opinions. So they're really, really important to make sure that you're having those conversations. Before I move over to my next slide, are there any questions, any thoughts from anybody here on who the instructional coaches are, how to reach out to them? Have you ever tried working with instructional coaches? Does anybody have a story of how their company might have worked out? David, please.
Yeah, well, we're in the early childhood region, so we work with kids from 2 years old to 8. The parent is super critical for our technology and our program to work. So you haven't really mentioned as much about what is that link between instructional coaches and parents, and I'm curious what your experience is and how does that work?
That's an interesting question. For me personally, I look at myself as the link between the parents and the classroom. I didn't understand this until 8 years ago. I've been coaching for 10 or 11 years now. I didn't understand this till about 8 years ago. And that's because I'm now the proud father of 8-year-old triplets. When I walk into a classroom, yes, I'm coming in with our school goals. We'll talk about that in a couple of seconds. Yes, I'm coming in with the content and the curricular of what's supposed to be happening in the pedagogy. But I'm also coming at it as, how do I help this teacher meet the goals of their parents? And for some people, that might be the 504s, the IEPs. But I'm always looking at, when I walk into a second grade classroom, of, okay, my kids are in second grade or my kids were in first grade. What, as a parent, do I want my kids to be able to do? How can I help that teacher reach those goals? So I'm trying to always come into a situation, come into a relationship, if you will, with the teacher from all of those point of views. And quite often, I love the conversations that I get a chance to have with teachers of, hey, my kid's in second grade and they're reading this. What are you doing? And sometimes having that family conversation takes the business angle of the coaching teacher relationship and lowers it a bunch. I really don't like talking to teachers about business. I like talking to them about their own families and their own kids and their own, and to build relationships. I always start with, hey, I got kids, you got kids. What are you doing? Have you tried this? What do you like? Oh, let me try this at home. And I'll even walk in and go, hey, I took your advice, tried it with my own kids. Now, can we do this in the classroom? And so as a coach, I really do not only try to be the advocate for admin, we'll talk about that in a second, be the advocate for classrooms, be the advocate for students, but I always try to be that advocate for the parent, because I'm learning from these teachers and these teachers are learning from their students. So I try to make sure that I have that whole community when I walk in and work with a teacher or a school district.
Thank you. Just an addendum to that question. How do you incorporate EdTech and online communication in that field of connection?
I try to make sure, that's another good question. One of the things that I get a chance to do every week in my district is new teacher orientation. And one of the big topics that I hit at new teacher orientation is parent communication and parent involvement. I want to make sure that from the beginning of their time with my district, the teachers understand the value of how to communicate with parents, and whether that's as simple as turning on parent notifications on Google Classroom, teaching them an app like Dojo, Remind, something like that. I'm always advocating for making sure that the parent is always involved. Clearly, that's a little different as we get higher in the grades and, you become a teenager, but especially in those younger grades, I'm always looking for, how can I involve parents, parent communication, streamline things? Because I am the parent that 3 weeks ago when my kids started school, I got 3 emails from 3 different teachers with 14 different ways of communicating to us. And I had a teacher say, "Oh, you want pictures of your kids? You'll find them on our public Twitter account." And I said, "No, let's do something here." And obviously when I work with my kids teachers, I try not to be like, Jeff, the EdTech guy, but how do we make sure that everyone's, safe and communicating and all that good stuff together?
Well, and to back that up too, I think, as instructional coaches in our building, we have a program that we call Parent Academy. And so our parents have the opportunity to come in once a month to learn about, and this became a really big deal with remote learning because our families really wanted to know, how do we connect? How do we support? What do we do for our kids at home? So we do a lot of Parent Academy and outreach that way. And so for a lot of those younger kids, they're coming, and of course kids are welcome and we provide food and everything there for them, but they're coming with their 2, 3, 4, 5-year-old, coming to learn about how they can support their 8 or 9-year-old in school, but you're hitting that family over multiple generations. And so the more we can try to get them involved and let them know that we appreciate their part of it, we do a lot of outreach to our parents. And I think, as a school district, that's important for us to do that, because I work in a little bit of a marginalized community where school access is not always seen as easy, or they don't know how to navigate it. So we try to do a lot of outreach from our end to make sure that they know that we value their input.
Thank you for sharing. So we know a little bit about who the coaches are. Let's talk a little bit about what the districts expect from their coaches. The joke that I always say on the podcast is that if you have 10 tech coaches, you have 25 different job descriptions. And no matter if you're called a tech coach, a teacher on special assignment, which they say a TOSA. I forget the acronym right now, but I've heard them being called ICE, which is an instructional coach expert or instructional coaching, something like that. My official title is instructional coach for digital learning, which means I use both the front and the back of the business card. I've had so many different titles, and some buildings, some school districts say the coach is here to help the teacher with the student. Some buildings say the coach is here to provide professional development outside the classroom. Some buildings say the coach is here to walk into the classroom and teach the technology because the teachers don't know how to do it. And all of that stuff is true. And no matter who I speak with and how many coaches I work with, they all have different job descriptions and they're all looking at things. On top of that, you have the misconception of what the role actually is. My role is to work with adults and to make sure that they're comfortable in their subject matter, using technology to hit the standards, and we're going to do it in a certain way. When I walk into a classroom, the teachers think I'm there to help them with their smart boards and changing the bulbs on their computers. And it's a matter of making sure that we all have the right thing. So going back to what we were talking about earlier, first of all, coaches have to be masters of their curriculum, right? And for me, I got to be honest, that's difficult. Being an orchestra teacher, being a music specialist, I was an elementary teacher, but I really wasn't. I taught middle school and high school, but I taught orchestra. So I still have I'm just that music teacher, always that imposter syndrome in the back, which is different than, and if you don't mind me asking, I'm going to put you on the spot. Katie, what was your background? What was your content area specialist, or what did you teach before you were a coach?
Middle school language arts and social studies. So I was in the classroom for 12 years.
Yeah, awesome. And she brings with her position all of the knowledge of the standards and the standardized testing and the how do you get kids to do it. She has a completely different background than I do. And so making sure that we're all masters of our curriculum to support teachers is the number one thing. For me, I work really, really hard so I can learn the science curriculum, math curriculum, English curriculum, so I can walk into a room and be on par with these other professionals who have been doing this for years or might be brand new to the district. The second thing that they always ask us to do is to model lessons and co-teach in the classroom. And those are difficult things. Katie might come in and say, we're going to learn how to teach this book, or we're going to learn how to do 5-paragraph essays. I'm the guy that's got to come in either with or behind Katie and say, okay, this 5-paragraph essay is great, but as the digital learning coach, I'm going to go, here's how we're going to do that using a Word doc or using a Google Doc or using a Canva or using a something. How do we take that traditional lesson and kick it up a notch? Or, using any of your EdTech products, how do we hit that 5-paragraph essay, but we're going to do it through that EdTech product. The last two things is really important because number one, we're optional, right? I walk into school every single day knowing that my position is optional. My position is really to support the district and the building leaders. And I've seen so many times where a coach has a easy working relationship with their building principals or a difficult working relationship, and they go in a different direction and it's not a very good relationship. But knowing that you're there to support the district and building leaders and building their goals is important. Assisting those administrators in their goals and their strategic plans, making sure that if the strategic plan says we got to raise the math scores, everything the coach is doing that year has to be supporting the math scores, whether it be supporting math through drawing, inking, video, audio, reading and comprehension, any of those things. It all has to do with we are the answer to how that building is going to hit it. So when you're looking at a coaching position from the EdTech role, it is about what are the building goals? How is that coach making sure that those building goals are met? And how can my product help that coach become successful in their job? And one of the things that I would highly recommend to any company out there, and I working with a lot of them, we have these conversations. What is the building strategic plan? What is the district strategic plan? What is the principal asking? We have 25 buildings in our district. Every building has a theme. Every coach is running on the same plane, but they're slightly different. How can one app work? I don't want to say who, but there is somebody in here who runs an application that I absolutely love, have covered it on TeacherCast, and I love it when my district is using it. But some buildings use it, some buildings don't. And it's all based off of their building needs, their building goals, and sometimes even their building theme. So making sure that we're understanding when working with our coaches of exactly what are the goals is extremely important. I'm curious to know, and we can open this up for discussion again, how many of you or how many of your companies have direct relationships with instructional coaches, get a chance to really get to know the instructional coaches? And I say that because sometimes when I work with EdTech companies, we have a meeting and they just go through their laundry list of here's what I am, here's what I can do. What else do you need? And they never take the time to go, what do you need from us? So if anybody wants to jump on, what relationships have you had? Kind of give us that kind of, that conversation with between your companies and any coaches.
I can start. Hi, I'm Will from Moat, and we were fortunate enough to have kind of EdTech coaches jump on our product quite early on and share it. And I think that immediately highlighted to me their value, both within their own school communities, but also online and within the communities that they create with other educators around the world. And so we've really tried to build programs and understanding around them, obviously giving them free access to our product, encouraging them to share it. I try and talk, it should be every week. It's not always every week, but I do try to find sort of EdTech coaches as examples of listen and understand and talk about our product, talk about opportunities that they see to improve. So I guess, yeah, we do try to maintain good conversations, and we've worked through, Google has a program of trainers, the Google Trainer Network, and if your product is in any way integrated in the Google ecosystem, that can be a great way to sort of build a network and host events, and that's something we've done quite a lot.
Is Moat a Google's, I don't know what the right term is, certified app or a Google partner?
Yes, yeah. So we jump through the various hoops to get sort of Google partner status in terms of using their APIs and sort of various other requirements. And that was, to be fair, that probably was icing on cake. I think that gives you an extra stamp of approval, but I think the kind of collaboration we had really sort of superseded that, or preceded that, sorry.
Anybody else want to jump in? Thank you for sharing.
I can go. I'm Tony from Core Insights, and we have a platform, an AI-driven platform that uses teacher and student voice, and we get information on the factors that really matter to move the needle for achievement and engagement. And then and then intelligently link teachers to the very best evidence-based instructional practice for their class. And what we're finding is that superintendents and heads of PDs are wanting us, 90% of them are wanting to use our product to support instructional coaches to be able to have those data-informed conversations, right? So that that they can know that the teacher's at least trying something, they can go and help with it. And then what we're finding is that it's not only supporting the coaches and teachers conversations and leading really collaborative PLCs, but also those conversations between the coaches and the administrators, which then help the administrators talk to the district leaders in a data-informed way.
I love that philosophy. You know, I'll hit this a little bit as we go later here, and I'm looking at the clock going, there's a lot of stuff to cover here, but I look at the instructional coaching position when it comes to the EdTech company. I really am the translator for what your goals are. That was cool. Everybody just kind of shook their head yes on that, right? Because you guys have your way of looking at, I don't want to say it that way, but EdTech companies have their way of looking at things, and we know what needs to happen in our specific classrooms. And it's just making sure that that transition happens. And we'll talk a little bit about that as we go through. Does anybody want to do like a quick 30-second share onto any of that? Or if not, I can move forward here. How does your company like to work with instructional coaches?
I'll go. So I work at a university and a college of education, and we work with a region of 18 counties, and we reach out to those instructional coaches and district learning coaches. And my department specifically, we provide PD for those people, and then they push out to their people. So we're kind of an intermediate step.
Nice. All right, let's go to the next one here, which is, how does instructional coaching work? Right. A lot of companies don't understand this, or don't take the time. And I want to make sure that this is important. Again, many districts kind of passionate about this, but many districts hire an instructional coach and say, go work with the teachers. And it doesn't work that way. When you're really looking at an instructional coaching program, when you're really building this whole structure for digital learning, digital support in the classroom, it has to start with the district strategic plan. It has to start with, what does the district want to see in a year, and in 2 years, 3 years, 5 years? The instructional coach is the answer to that problem, right? And I've been in situations where a principal says, Jeff, go play in the classrooms. And it doesn't work that way. The only way that instructional coaches work is if the principal says to the teacher, this is what I want to see when I walk into the classroom. When I come in and do your observations, this is what I'm expecting. This is how I'm expecting it to be seen. This is the type of learning I want to see. And if a teacher says, how do I do that? That's the instructional coach. The instructional coach is the answer for, how does the district meet their strategic goals? How does the building meet their SIP? How does the classroom meet their learning goals? It's all done through the classroom. So it all done through the coaches. So it starts with a strategic plan, knowing what the district wants in 1, 2 to 5 years. The teachers are having those performance expectations by the principal. Coaches meet with teachers to plan. That could be a 3-minute conversation. That could be, let's sit together on my prep. That could be a faculty meeting, a department meeting, a grade level meeting. It could be a 1-to-1 meeting. And then finally, it's having the coaches come in and work with the teachers and the students. So when you're looking at working with school districts from a marketing point of view, I know there's a lot of our app does this, our app does this, our app does this. And what I'm trying to figure out is, how can we help with the conversation of, do you have these goals in your class? We're the solution for that. Because coaches get hit every single day by, check this out, check this out, check this out. Especially walking through a conference like an FETC or ISTE, you walk through 900 yards of vendor tables. Everybody's got the latest and greatest. And that goes back to having that conversation with the coach, saying, what are your goals? What do you need? Because if I know that my district wants A, B, and C, I'm going to look for an app or a solution or a product or a partner that's going to answer all of those questions. But when you start with, let's work with the teachers, or when the app company says, I'm going to hit the classroom first, that's usually where we start to find a little bit of issues. And that's where the apps don't work, or in many cases, a district spends $20,000 to bring in an app for the entire thing, but then nobody uses it because the district wants to do it. The tech director might say, let's just buy it. It's the end of the year. We have extra money. We'll do something. But then no one's using it. Well, no one's using it because there's no expectation from the top that this tool is going to scratch the back of the need of the strategic plan. So that being said, let's do a quick pause here. How do you position your companies? How do you position your apps to meet the needs of the school districts rather than saying, my app has all these great features, sign up today? How do you change your branding? How do you change your marketing? What things have you done that's worked? So that way, not only do you get that first contract, but you get that second, third, and fourth level contract.
Okay, we do actually, and not every time, but particularly on the larger deals, we do try to, look through the strategic plans that a lot of districts will publish on their websites, and then try to associate the benefits of our product with those plans. So in our case, that might be, you have a particular goal around addressing the needs of your English learners, or you have a particular goal around helping, students with these kinds of needs, get a better outcomes. Here's how other schools have done that with our product, and so we'll try and do that. But I think it's a very tough problem. I think even when you've got that intent at the top, translating that to action, I think it's rare to see the whole system working well together in our experience.
I see a lot of heads shaking. Anybody else want to share a story? This is so important because this is what's going to help people like myself promote your apps to my district leaders, right? A lot of coaches walk through ISTE, they stop by your booth and they love the fact that you've got Kit Kats, and then they want to leave the booth and then go back and say, let's go get this. But it's got to come from, how does your application, solution, whatever, how does that meet the needs of the strategic plan? If I can talk to my boss about how it's going to meet his strategic goals, you're in. Simple as that. You can be in for 5 or 6 years because it's going to be meeting the needs of the strategic plan. Go ahead.
I wanted to ask something. So the strategic plan is not always like aligned with what the teacher needs. And how do we, provide something that helps the teacher but also gets aligned, and so that's one small question. And then also it's hard, like, so who are the people that we need to talk to understand whether a solution really fits both the teacher's needs and the district needs? And are these you guys like instructional coaches?
Yeah, and for many school districts, that's the answer, right? And again, I've been in, so for instance, in my previous district, we had 2,500 people and I had a big role in the district, but I wasn't an administrator. And in a small district, like, the administrator holds all the cards. Here in my current district, I've got 25 buildings, 14,000 students, and my role as a lead coach is to be the one that talks to you guys and then reports back to then make those decisions. Whereas in my other district, it was, I could show up for the meeting, but really it's your meeting with my boss, not your meeting with me. And it's a similar position, but due to the size of the district, the technology leader has a lot more on his plate. So I love where I am now because I do get to have those meetings. I do get to be the one to sell you guys to my district. And sometimes it is the instructional coach that you want to talk to and have those relationships and build those relationships. And I definitely don't want to leave today. Ooh, 11:42. I definitely don't want to leave today without talking about marketing strategies and drip campaigns and things like that. But a lot of it does come from just knowing who the right person to talk to is. And is it the coach? Is it the tech director? We have a tech director in our district, but he's not the top guy. He's just in charge of the IT. Whereas in my previous district, the term tech director was the top banana, and he was the one making decisions for everything. And so just knowing the org chart a little bit, and I love how Will's like, how Will already said, you know, he goes to those strategic plans, he figures these things out. So that way you're ready to do it. No coach wants to sit down and have a presentation made, but they always want to have a good conversation, because after all, that teacher might say, I want to use Moat. I've heard about this Moat thing on social media. I saw a Facebook group. I saw a tweet about it. What can I do? Also keep in mind, when you're looking at all of those different things, I can't have a conversation with you in my district unless you're willing to sign our acceptable use policy. And that's another webinar altogether, but I see a lot of heads nodding going, okay, like you might be the best thing you might be the perfect solution, but if you're not willing to sign my district's AUP, it doesn't, we can't have that conversation at all. So making sure that you're able to meet the goals, know the goals, be flexible. And, obviously the biggest thing in the world right now is student safety and privacy. Let's move forward, because I want to respect everybody's time here, kind of doing the last few couple things. But this is the biggie. Why are instructional coaches important? First of all, we are, if anything else, personalized professional trainers for teachers. I don't think teachers even understand that. I will come to you at any point in time. I will stay for 5 minutes. I will stay for a half an hour. I'll work with you for weeks on at a time. We call those things coaching cycles. I'll get here early. I'll stay here late. I will make sure that you are comfortable doing whatever you need to do, whether it be in math, social science, or digital learning. We're also the voice of the teachers in those leadership meetings. And leadership could be when I'm working with my administrators, or when I'm helping to form things like our strategic plan or our lesson plans or our curriculum or something like that. But in addition to being the voice of the teacher, I'm also the voice of the student when I'm working with you. Because when I'm, I'll just use Moat as an example. I'm just picking him out because Will's awesome. When I talk to Will about Moat, I'm going to say, I have these students that have these issues specifically. Does Moat do this? If not, how quickly can you do it? Or is this possible? Or how do we, right? So I'm the voice of the student. And this goes back to what I forget whoever said it earlier. I'm also the voice of the parent, right? And yes, I have 8-year-old triplets, but on top of that, I have 8-year-old special needs triplets. So I'm always going into this and saying, can we get this? Can we get this? Can we get this? Can we get this? And how do we do it? Because I have a need for this. And your app is 90% perfect. How can you help me make it 100% perfect? We're also, as I mentioned earlier, we're the translator for the district, right? The district has a strategic plan, but if you mentioned, somebody just mentioned it earlier, the strategic plan might not be meeting the needs of the teacher, but we still have to go by it because the strategic plan is your huge umbrella. So how do we hit all of those goals at the teacher level, at the student level? How do we hit the admin goals at the teacher level? So that way, when they do their walkthroughs, it's all here. But also for you, you have your EdTech goals. We have our EdTech goals. How can this relationship be beneficial to both of us? I'm curious, Katie and anybody else who's on here as a coach, anything that you would want to add to this of why are coaches important? I know we can do an entire book on this, but what else would you add on this, Katie? I'm going to keep putting you in the spot, so appreciate it.
That's okay. I think the instructional coach is really company's main pathway. And I know for us in our district, teachers can apply to have an app approved for the district, but that application then goes through me, our IT director, our assistant superintendent, and our director of teaching and learning. And the 4 of us have a meeting every week where we review everything. And our IT director says, does it work and it play nice within our system? I look at it and say, is this going to keep our children safe? Are we following, safety and security? And what is the purpose of it? And then our assistant superintendent and director of teaching and learning, they listen to the IT person and myself, and they say, okay, if this sounds good, it's going to benefit our student, it aligns with our district, we'll find the money and we'll figure it out and we'll go through with it. So it's really a team approach, but I think it starts with those instructional coaches because they're in line with what's happening, not only at the admin level, but also what's happening in the everyday classrooms.
So let's break down what Katie just said, because that's priceless. A teacher comes to Katie, and I'm just going to use Will as the example here, but a teacher comes to Katie and says, I heard of this thing called Moat. Can we do it? And Katie might say, put in a form so that way it's officially on our meeting agenda. But Katie's going to go to the administrator meeting going, I was working with Sally, and Sally has a student that really could use this thing, or, Moat is the answer for how do I get a hold of these students. The parents like Moat because it does X, Y, and Z. She is the advocate for that parent. She is the advocate for that teacher. She's the advocate for that student. And she's also the advocate for the EdTech company, because after all, that is the answer to solving the problem. I've been in many of these meetings where somebody goes, teacher A wants this. Jeff, have you heard about it? And I go, I don't know, right? I don't know. And that's, like, again, you're that fulcrum. You're in the middle of all of those things. Now, one of two things is going to happen. Either the district is going to say, yes, let's use Moat in the classroom. I'm going to approve it. Let's start the process. A, is it free? B, do we have to pay for it? Contract, AUP, all of that stuff. And if that's true, Katie's going to then say, all right, it's approved. Now what? How do I make the teachers know about it? How do I alert the principals that this is new? Do we have to push out the Chrome extension? I'll go talk to that person. Do we have training materials? How do I get the training materials out? Do I have to train them myself? Or does Moat on their website provide a whole bunch of YouTube videos that talks about how do I use Moat with English, social studies, science? Or do I need to spend the time building all of that training? Because a lot of coaches have this fear of, well, the district has approved all these things, but I don't know about it. Or the district has approved all these things, and now I have to be the master and the expert of it. So on the best side, the district says yes, and Katie's got to figure out how to bring that to everybody. Because after all, in that example, Moat isn't for the teacher. Moat is now for the district. The other thing that's going to happen is the district's going to say, no, we can't use Moat. Not on the acceptable use policy. We don't have the money for it, or we have another app that does what Moat does. We're going to go with that one instead because we've already signed a contract with it. And one of two things are going to happen. Either the teacher is going to get a form email back from the school district saying no, or Katie's going to go to that teacher and go, look, I know you're looking for this. I had my meeting. I pushed, but the district said, and these are the reasons why. And so Katie's got to now be the translator for the district. And sometimes those are difficult conversations. Katie, you've been on I've been on both ends of that. I'm sure you've been on both ends of that, right?
Oh yeah, it's not always fun.
So on one hand, you are the advocate for the teacher. And on the other side, you are the advocate for, because Katie can't walk into that teacher and go, yeah, those jerks in central office said no to you. You can't do that. You have to put on that happy face. And so that's, again, where having that information, the more information we can get the instructional coaches, the easier we can make. As an example, I love it when EdTech companies have really good YouTube channels. But if I can't use any of those videos and I have to now make my own for training purposes, I really don't want the app. And I'll tell you who does a really, really good job at this. So a company who does a really good job at making videos for their users to share, honestly, is Canva. If you look at Canva's got 875 videos up right now, but they're not, here's a feature, here's a feature. It's here's how you can use this as a designer. Here's how you can use this as a marketer. And if we can start getting companies to start, here's how a video can be used in social studies class. I can now take that video and just put it in my newsletter and ship it out. That's just as important as a 90-second video about a feature, because a teacher doesn't want to see a feature. A teacher wants to know, how can this help me solve my math problem? I guess math problem is the right way, but you know what I'm saying.
And that for me as an instructional coach is a huge piece of what we look at is what is the professional development and training that's already provided through the company. Because as I said, me being a department of one, I only have so much capacity in a K-12 district. So the more support that is out there for our teachers to see how they can use it effectively with our students is awesome.
And think about it in the broader sense. Microsoft and Google are huge. So if I can get a video that says, how do I use Google Slides in this social studies lesson, is a lot better sometimes than here's a video of 5 new things you can do with slides. The teacher doesn't want to see 5 new things I can do with the app. They want to go, I'm teaching this book next week. Here's a way to use, here's a template that I can use for this book project. So just to kind of wrap up here, and then I really do want to open this up for conversation for as long as you need. The kids are away. This is a biggie. I've thought a lot about this and have done various shows and conversations and topics on this, but how can EdTech support instructional coaches. And I think the biggest is using teacher language. And that's why the first thing we said was, first of all, coaches are teachers. They're certified teachers. I have been going to ISTE for 10, 11 years now, and I've done interviews with all of them. And I clearly remember the first time I did an interview with certain companies, and they didn't, like, 5-minute interviews, and they kept talking about their solution. The solution does this, the solution does this, the solution does this. And honestly, you could see my face in those interviews going, what is he talking about? Teachers don't work in solutions. Teachers talk about students. Teachers talk about student-centered goals. They talk about standards. They talk about, so using language that the teacher understands is really, really helpful. And I see this a lot in EdTech marketing. We have the solution for, I don't want the solution. I want something that's going to help my teachers. And I understand the word for that in EdTech world is solution, but that's not how teachers use it. So my suggestion is in print and marketing and anything like that, use teacher slang. We love that, and it helps us to have that relationship. Speaking of which, number 2, build those personal relationships, knowing what struggles your coaches have. Just by listening to Katie for a few seconds here, we have very similar positions, but we're completely different in what we're doing. Knowing what she needs, knowing what I need, what our struggles are. She's struggling because she's the only one. I'm struggling because I'm one of 7 out of 25 buildings. Very easy to figure out that, we've got similar needs, but we've also got different needs. And I've been in Katie's position of, I was the guy for the district. Katie, I'm just curious, how many students do you have in your district?
Just over 7,000.
That's a lot. And I work with coaches around the country. I work with coaches that have multiple districts. I work with coaches that have multiple buildings. I even work with a coach right now who, in order to get to one of their schools, they have to take an airplane because they live in Canada. And one of her schools is it's like the district is the province. And in order to get to another school, it requires an airplane and a hotel. But that's the job. And they do that a couple times a month. So what struggles do the coaches have, and how are they working to meet the needs? Katie, what are you doing? How are you meeting the needs? What do you do? All of those questions are there. And then now that you know those needs that sorry, Katie, a coach has, provide the resources. What kind of videos do we need to make? What kind of one sheets do we need to make? I've seen a lot of companies put out these product one sheets, but they're all in tech talk. They're not in teacher talk. And right now, like for instance, my boss is saying, we're going to start a unit on intro to computers, whatever that, that kind of a thing. I can't yet find simple one sheets that I can just go here, here, here. I'm finding really good one sheets, but I have to translate all the words into second grade language. Well, I don't want that. I don't even want to do this job, because how much time is it going to take me to translate, this thing over here into something that a first grader can read? So knowing who the audience is, knowing who your tool is, create the materials for the coaches just to pass on and to hand out. But in addition to that, create it for the parents too. Katie mentioned she does a parent, what's it called? We call it Parent University. What do you call it, Katie?
Parent Academy.
Parent Academy, right? So giving Katie something to give to her first graders is awesome, but also giving something for the parent that might talk on the adult level of, why is this important? What are they going to learn? How, what's the theory behind it? Those are important things too, because a parent's always going to be asking the district, why are you using this? How much are you spending on it? What's the reason for doing it? Anything that we can give the Katies of the world to hit both of those spectrums is absolutely good. It's going to help them save time, and it's going to help them through the use of your resources. The last 2 things I think are really the key to all this. And I'm not going to say anything that nobody here doesn't know, but number 1, be active online. If Katie needs help, she doesn't have time to sit down and write an email, but to go on Twitter and to say, hey, Moat, I have a question, or hey, Moat, this is broken, or hey, Moat, like, be active, have somebody available, or, always have the Twitter chat on the side of your computer as you're sitting there doing your thing. Being active to make sure that these teachers have a very quick, easy way. Because if a teacher says, hey, Katie, I need this, and Katie goes on Twitter and says, hey, Moat, I need this, the quicker Moat can respond, Katie can now go back to that teacher and be a rock star. And that's really where we want to start building those relationships of, I was able to get an answer for your question, or, hey, I figured out how this feature works. Okay. And the last one I'd love to get your thoughts on. I've already heard two people actually today say it. And the concept is, do you give out free things? And I don't want to say raise your hand if you give out free accounts to coaches and stuff like that. But I do think, and I've had a lot of conversations about this, especially since ISTE, but I think there's a difference between saying a coach is valuable to that school district. I'm going to give them, super God admin mode to everything and make sure they have all access to all the resources and all the videos and all of that stuff. I think that's important. If Katie's school district has purchased an application, make sure Katie has access to everything and knows about it as it's coming up. But using ISTE as an example, giving away free stuff to coaches so that way they can then try it for free and then sell the application to their district cold. I have a couple of thoughts on that one. Because then my thought is then you're using the coach to be your workers. And I have an issue with that. So using coaches to support, using coaches to share is great. But I personally have an issue with companies saying, I'm going to give all these coaches free stuff because one day maybe they'll turn around and now I've got a sale from their school district. I don't like using coaches as that, but that's me. Katie, am I missing anything here? How would you like to be supported by people? And coaches and stuff like that. If there's anything on here that anybody wants, please, let's just kind of open this up. I have 2 more slides. I know it's the top of the hour, but Katie, thoughts?
I think you pretty much covered it.
If you're looking for more information on all of this stuff, there's a few different places that you can find me. I do have a weekly podcast called Ask the Tech Coach. It's all about instructional coaches for digital learning leaders. We like to have people like yourselves on to talk about things. We do have a very broad membership site called our Instructional Coaches Network. We've actually got 3 different versions. We've got a Facebook version, we've got a LinkedIn version if you want to be more professional, and we've also got one for more digital learning leaders on a new platform called k12leaders.com. And these are all great places where we have a ton of coaches to support. And then on top of that, I have my weekly newsletter called Digital Learning Today, where I share out the best of education and, kind of share all my podcasts and stuff like that. And on top of that, you can, of course, always find me over on teachercast.net and email me, tweet me, follow me on YouTube. And if you want to talk about anything after this, I'm certainly love to. I love working with EdTech companies just as much as I love working with coaches and stuff, to help make sure that what the intent of the app is being used by coaches, teachers, and students. So Amy, I want to say thank you so much for having me on today. We can stop the recording if you want at this point, but I'm going to be on here for as long as you need. I want to have a good conversation, and I want to say thank you guys out there. And on behalf of everybody here on TeacherCast, keep up the great work in your classrooms, and please continue sharing your passions with all of our students. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff.